New programs geared to transform interactions between law enforcement and drivers with potential communication barriers.
14 News reporter Zariah Cole explains how this new program works.
The new optional program allows Kentucky drivers to add a special code to their vehicle registration. The code, which is only visible to county clerks and law enforcement, signals potential communication barriers.
You're not really putting a physical decal on your vehicle suggesting that you may have a communication barrier.
By scanning your license plate, officers can quickly access information about the driver's communication needs, such as sign language, speech impairments, or hearing loss.
In a wreck, and law enforcement arrives on the scene, runs that tag, and shows that there is a communication barrier or some form of disability, that allows us, especially if you're rendered unconscious or you're severely injured, we can allow the medics to know that this person has, or at least registered this vehicle under the pretext of having some type of disability, and then at that point they can adjust as accordingly.
This proactive measure aims to reduce misunderstandings and ensure safer interactions during traffic stops. Officials say it is a step towards fostering better communication and understanding between both law enforcement and the community.
Knowing before you walk up to that vehicle that you may experience some type of communication barrier between the driver and us, that helps so much more. And it allows us to step back for a moment and realize the resources that we do have to really have an effective traffic stop and go ahead and address what was needed to be addressed right there by using the resources at hand.
The program is free and voluntary. Reporting in Henderson, Kentucky, Zariah Cole, 14 News.
For more information on how to sign up and participate in this groundbreaking program, officials say to contact your local county clerk's office.